Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your hosts, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense. Welcome back into the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino, and I am here with Mr. Backwards Hat, squeezed in a workout this morning, Joe LaVacca. Welcome back in, Joey boy.
I'm happy to be here. You used the backwards hat one before, but you kind of saved it with sandwiching in the workout characteristic.
That's it.
And I do want to sing you my workout today because
when
you're done with the intro, I want to, because that's why I was able to squeeze
one of our 17 YouTube subscribers, but we'll allow
100% increase in YouTube. And we don't market. We don't really do anything with YouTube. I mean, it's just there for your viewing pleasure, but we don't really push it too much. So, I think
if anyone wants to watch you sing today, you know where to find Joe.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, as we mentioned, the show is on YouTube, Cups of Joe _PT. We would love. Joe's looking for a 400% increase. So I think our goal is 68 by the end of 2025. So get in there and shoot us a subscribe. And also on Instagram, I am at Joe Gambino DPT, and LaVacca is at Strength and Motion _PT. If you are interested in working with us, there's an application form in the show notes, and you can always reach out to us on Instagram to have a conversation. All right, Joe, tell us about your workout and sing us Murray's song.
I guess, the first thing I would ask you, or maybe have listeners reflect on, you're all set for Christmas. Do you have anything to do on your list? People are shopped for, you got wrapped presents, all this stuff.
There's probably a couple things I need to pick up still, and then it's just having to handle dinner on Christmas Day.
That's really nice, because I leave for Pittsburgh on Sunday, as I was talking to you. I will be with Courtney and her family this year. And I think between now and Sunday, because we film on Friday morning, I have about 47 things to still do. My washing machine decided to run through its lifespan about 2 weeks ago. So I have to find my way to a laundromat. I feel like I'm back in college over the last couple of weeks. So I have to do that. I have to ship out little Strength and Motion beanies. Yeah, check these out for people watching on YouTube. This is a little gift to people who've been training throughout the year, just as like a little thank you.
So I'm waiting for mine to arrive in the mail.
Yes. I have one on reserve for you, but I have to do that before the post office closes, so people get it in time. I'm having my parents for our Christmas on Saturday, so I have to do all that, right? So there's just so many things. I still have to buy I think 1 or 2 presents for someone also. Mainly my mom, who I'm going to be seeing in about 24 hours from now, right? So all this jammed in. I'm looking at my schedule today. I got meetings, I got virtual consults. I got to go pick up Avery from school. I'm like, when the hell am I going to work out? And then I opened up my True Coach app and I saw this workout and I was like, I think I could do it. I'm going to sing it to you though, because it's the 12 days of Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Go for
so you do the workout like the song from the beginning. I'm going to spare us that though. I'm just going to go from the very, very end. So my workout today, 12 squat jumps, 11 push-up renegade rows, 10 single arm kettlebell snatches, 9 V-ups, 8 kettlebell swings, 7 hanging leg raises, 6 burpees, 5 double dumbbell push press, 4 double dumbbell front rack lunges, 3 strict chin pull-ups, 2 dumbbell thrusters, and 1 double dumbbell devil's press. That's it.
That sounds fun.
So I started from the beginning all the way through. How long do you think that took me to go from 1 to 2, back to 2, 1, back to 3, back?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm just going to ballpark it. I'm going to just go right in the middle of my 2 numbers and say 40 minutes.
40 minutes, 33 minutes and 14 seconds.
I was between 35 and 45, so I just went right to the middle.
I hear you. So I don't know if that's good or not. Shot it off, but I was panting And that's why I was a couple minutes late. And that's why I put the hat on, because I quickly showered. I wanted to look presentable for you, but I also didn't want to be too late. I wanted to respect your time. So here I am.
That's all right. That's all
We're
right.
ready to rock.
We're ready to rock. I do love, just on a little side tangent note here, I love workouts like that. And I love when they're set, I mean, like this is like a one and done. You don't repeat it. Yeah, I like having little density like circuits like that, and that actually like extend, because it's always surprising how much time people can shave off of those things with just like doing it from a work capacity standpoint. And have you ever heard of the 10,000 swing challenge by Dan John?
I have. That's like 10,000 swings in a month, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It is. I will never, ever, ever, ever do it again. I got the car key that needs to go to my wife. Get the jingles in the background for the podcast.
I was like, what's going on? We got a little background music going on today? This is great.
Christmas spirit. The Ghost of Christmas Past coming to visit me. Yeah, I mean, I did the 10,000 swing challenge with a while back. I think I did it with Frank Duffy, and it was the most miserable experience of my life. And you go through this like, I don't even remember. I don't remember how many swings it is in a day. It might be like 250 or something.
I was just 333 swings per day.
Yeah. So you did that. I think I did the 4-day cycle, not the 5-day cycle. I forget which one I did. But I think at the beginning it took me because you would pair it's like swings, and then you pair it with like a movement for that
and
a
day. Movement?
Yeah. Swings plus like
Good
one
Lord.
strength movement, and each day had like it was like a different category. So I had like pistols on one day with it. I had some sort of press with it, and I don't remember. It was so long ago that I did it. Anyway, it took me like 45 minutes. I think to get through like a day in the beginning, and by the end of it, I was doing it in like 28 or 30 minutes. Like so much time got shaved off. And shortly after that, like I PR'd, like it was like the heaviest deadlift I've ever done. I did like 355.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was like
it with a specific weight jump. Or
as I did it with 53.
Okay, all right, that's very cool. Yeah. That's very cool. And that was that the standard?
That was yes. Yeah, it was like 53 for men, 35 for women.
Okay, very good. Very good. Joe, I'm very impressed. I mean,
but that's what I was saying. I like those kind of things. Like it's, I'd like to do like density circuits for people where it's like just like the workouts built in, but each A block, B block, C block is like a time circuit.
Yeah.
And the goal is to just do either more weight or more sets throughout it. And like people are always like blown away with like how much more they can do. So little things like that I think are always good, because going back to like our episode where we talked about like the 5-3-1 stuff is similar in that regard.
Yeah.
Instead of like maximal strength, we're looking at strength over a period of time. So it's interesting. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I commonly would do that for like day 4 of a workout for people, right? Just to get a little bit more volume. And I think we spoke last week when we were discussing like what to do with missed days. And you mentioned that, the beginning of your weeks, very much like mine, are a little bit more intensity based, a little heavier with weight. And then it, kind of trickles down as the week progresses. But every now and then, even with like the 2-day people, I'll copy that 4-day workout in there and throw it on their second day. And they're like, what's going on? They're like, we were not prepared for this. You're trying to sabotage us. And I'm like, no, I just want to make sure you mix it up a little bit with some heart rate stuff, especially if you're not getting a lot of cardio in during the week. You got your 2 days of strength dialed in, but now let's just throw you something, a little challenge, if you will. So it's always fun to read their feedback when awesome. You get a little density day going against you there. Very good, man. All right. Well, 333 swings a day for 30 days. You might inspire some people for the new year. This is a big...
it's one of those things that I recommend but don't recommend. It's like, do it once, test your body, see how it goes. I mean, I had to actually get like hand wraps at some point because you ever play, I don't know if anyone on this podcast that listens will understand the reference, but Mario Party back in the day, where you had to like the joystick, you had to rotate. You ever play the old school Mario Parties?
No, I don't think so.
My God, Joe, you're not even going to get it. You used to, if you played it a whole bunch, because there's like the center joystick, and one of the moves you had to like turn it real fast. You'd get like the skin would just peel off, and I had that to like a really high extent after my swings. I had to bandage that bad boy up to survive the month. Anyway, let's switch gears. Let's get into the topic of today. We're doing our 5 takeaways from 2024, our 6 months or so of podcasting. we'll kind of just alternate these and, spitball and talk about them and what we learned. And, I definitely enjoyed getting back into the podcast experience and, learn from others and learn from you, Joey Boy. So let's do it. You can take number one.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This is the first
Which
experience.
I think I just segued into.
I think you did. Yeah. But I think this was the first experience I've had with a podcast. I had thought about doing one on my own, and it never really appealed to me to just, sit there talking to myself. And we had been talking about doing it for so long. I didn't know how long it would last, if it would last. And here we are, episode 37, on our way to 50 and beyond. So this has been really fun. So again, thank you for such a great year so far.
You're
Looking
welcome.
forward to the future.
Thank you, Joe.
And that is my number one sort of takeaway from the podcast over the last, 5 or 6 months, is being able to sit down and chat with a clinician like yourself, and maybe even our guests. But I'm going to, single you out here because we spend the most time together. And it's just been nice to hear your stories with patient care. It's been great to hear your training advice with all your training background. And being able to, you brought up the 5-3-1 idea. That's going to be, something I roll in with people in the beginning of the new year. And, just those little things of programming, how you structure, the advice you give. I thought those were the best for me. So that's going to be my number one. Working by yourself, and I'm sure you can relate to this to some degree, you almost start living in a vacuum. Your ideas make sense. Like, you read and interpret your own thoughts, and then you start to implement them with clients, and we can always say everything worked, or it worked, better than what I was doing before. So I think I just appreciated hearing a lot of the alternate ways of thinking, alternate ways of training. So there's number one for me. And I hope that the listeners got something out of that as well, listening to us, trade ideas, not only as clinicians, but as people.
Yeah. And, it brings me back to like our perfect stride days. Like working it, solo in your own business, you don't have anyone to spitball with or do things. That was the one thing I loved about being at Perfect Stride with like you and Vakash and Dan is like, you just got to walk over. And I don't know how many times we just sat there and just like, let's try this, let's try that. And then like it ended up on social media. And I think it's one reason, like that kind of like exploration and being experimental with things was like really great for, I think it worked really great for social media for us, but just in like our learning and our like process. And I was a young clinician when, like I said, I think in episode 0, Joe, or episode 1, where, surprised you as you were one of my mentors. So, it's nice to have that back and being able to spitball. And then just kind of like, I had this as a bonus, but since we're talking about it now, from your perspective or my perspective, listening to you, you've always had great, the way that you speak with your clients, the questions that you ask. So, everything that you kind of like bring up from that perspective. And I know even like questions I ask my clients today are things that we've talked about in the past, either when like, I came to see you at Encore or from Perfect Stride. And, I've been able to pull a few things from our conversations here on this podcast. So, I think that's probably some from you. The bigger takeaways is just always about like your patient communication and how you're empathizing with them and getting things across to them, because it's definitely when people are in a lot of pain, it's, I do believe that the way that we speak and the way that we talk to our patients, goes a long way, because I've seen a whole lot of bad stories about, doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors just saying something that puts a patient into a spiral, so to speak. So I appreciate that as always, Joe.
Yeah, make each other better, man. Make each other better. That's our motto. And maybe hopefully we get a little bit more engagement from audience, patients, and clinicians alike, so they can join in on the banter in 2025. Mm-hmm. But I think that's our motto. Make each other better.
That's it. Number 2 for us is, for both of us, is the people's stories with their pain. So the guests that we've had and how it impacts what they've done. And I don't know, I think Stella and Clayton stood out to me the most, because they both had these like very, very significant injuries that impacted like everything about them, especially Stella. And just hearing these stories about how they've overcome it, which I think is like, it's not unique, but I feel like that, not a lot of people can overcome very significant things like that the way that they did. So it was great to hear their stories of their struggles, how they overcome it, and then how it kind of brings them to where they are today. And I just think overall, like, I mean, pain is such like a subjective experience. You're always in it in a sense. I've been in it for a very, very long time, and you almost forget that other people experience it too. So I think it kind of, hearing other people's stories, like, yeah, maybe it's not so, you know, not, it's maybe it's a little more normal than you would think to have pain, to struggle with pain, and that there is potentially a way for you to kind of overcome it and get your life back. So I think that's a huge takeaway, or stuff that I really enjoyed learning about or listening to this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's other than what do you take or how do you take your coffee? That is
Yes.
the only question we ask
I'm
every
surprised
single
that's not on our
person.
list for you, Joe, because you
Yeah,
seem to have gotten a lot of coffee
actually,
takeaways this year.
reading number 3, it kind of ties into number 2. So maybe we switch it and just, realizing how amazing people's coffee creativity is. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the only question we ask every single person. I know you singled out Mike and Clayton, and I would totally agree. I think they were most open
Mm-hmm.
in their journey. And when you hear the struggles that they went through, I think that really connected, hopefully, with a lot of people listening, that they were able to overcome so much and multiple setbacks, multiple flares, multiple, quote unquote, failures throughout their whole process, but they just kept moving forward. And I think for both of them, it really kind of shaped the way they think. It shaped them as people. And I think that's what makes them now such good coaches and clinicians. But I do think that we're always taught, hey, it's not necessarily about us. It's not sometimes, quote unquote, appropriate to share our stories. But I think the question I ask a lot for people is, hey, do you mind if I share something about myself that relates to what you're saying? And I think that pain and injury just makes people feel so alone. And when you share a story from you, or you share a story from someone like Mike and Clayton and all they've been able to overcome, I do really think it makes a big difference to know, hey, we said it in episode 1 or 0 or wherever it was, right? We're not immune to the same things that we help the clients that come to see us. I still have pain. I still have fear and worry and doubt and anxiety, and so do our clients. So if we're not able to connect at that level, then what's the point? Then people, I think, still feel alone. They still look at us as these people who need to fix them. And, I think that was a really kind of cool thing to ask each guest that we had. And I think, one of our other thoughts too, and maybe we can, kind of push it into the new year also, is actually just getting real life, patients that we've worked with too, to share, that similar idea of like, what do they wish they knew? Maybe that's their question, hey, where you are now, and what do you wish you knew at the beginning of your rehab? Because I think that would be kind of pretty powerful too, as like, what were the key takeaways? But yeah, I think, we were both pretty set on number 2.
Yes, 100% agreed there. Well, I mean, I think number three and number 2 are super, super tied together. So just run us right into it, because I don't know how much more we can add to it.
Yeah, well, I think if we just kind of tie in the idea that pain is an emotion, then your story is not going to only influence you as a person and maybe the way you think professionally, but it's going to influence the way you build your business. So the way Clayton connects with his clients, the way Mike valued manual therapy so much because it made such a big difference for him. And now he brings that to his clients. When, Courtney is so, at first glance, you look at Court and her website and her Instagram page, and you're like, wow, it's so biomechanical. There's so much like nuance. And yet Courtney and the things that she's been through in her life that she shared with us, I mean, she's crying and hugging every single person that she works with for the most part. She's crying on Zoom calls. And when we share clients, they say that, and they say how much it means to them to be able to connect with somebody at that level when it also happens to be their healthcare provider. So I think that hearing, maybe this is the way to reframe it, but hearing each story affected the way that our coaches and other clinicians, went about their practice. But then ipso facto, maybe the other big takeaway was hearing how patients responded to those
Mhm.
emotions that these people bring. So it really does matter. I have a bias where I think it matters. You might have a bias based on
Sure.
what we've talked about that you think it matters. But then, we start bringing on all these guests and you can see how it matters to their business and their practice as well. So you kind of, again, start to realize, hey, maybe this is just an important thing that we have to do. And I likened it to, kind of smoking the other day with someone. Look, you're not going to get a gold medal because you don't smoke, right? So, but if you do smoke, that's really bad. So it's sort of like same thing in healthcare, right? If you're an asshole, right, it's really bad for you and your practice. But if you're just a nice person, you're not going to get a gold star, right? It's just the standard. It's just what you should do. And I think because it's fallen so far, into the fringe world of healthcare almost, it's not viewed as that anymore. Or people will try it once or twice and be like, oh, well, that didn't work. There was no sense. All this person did was cry. It made me uncomfortable. So now I'm just going to go back to talking about their quad strength, or their back endurance or this or that, or looking at one specific thing in a bubble. So maybe that's how we can flip it a little bit.
Yeah, I do like that, and it's one thing. As you were talking about, it made me think. Even like anybody, I mean, if we're talking about pain as an emotion, if there's someone work with someone they highly like, everybody has a guy for something they highly recommend if they have a really good experience, right? So I think it goes like just tying it all together, right? Like if someone's listening and they're looking for, maybe they're not overly happy or not with their experience, or they're not seeing results, finding somebody where they seem like unlike your initial encounter, where they don't just ask you about your pain, right? But they're actually asking you questions about how it's impacting your life, and almost like getting a little personal in a sense, because I think that layer of connection and understanding is really what allows people to connect and like buy into it. But also, like the ability for that person that's trying to find a PT or someone that they trust, like that trust factor is probably like the highest, or the almost like the biggest thing. Like I don't remember where I read it, but it's out there plenty. But like,
In a
you
book.
can, yeah, in a book somewhere, maybe in a paper. But trust is even more important than like the program that you put out there. Like you can have somebody, like you can give them the exact thing that they need, but they hate you, they're not going to get better. Or you can give them like a mediocre program, but they love you and really trust you and believe that you're going to be able to help them, and that seems to be a large part of things. So, I think that, if you're not really highly connected with the person that you're working with, you know, try to find somebody that will, if you're not seeing the results. Not doesn't mean that if you didn't make that connection that they can't help you, but something to keep in the back of your mind as a listener. All
Absolutely.
right. Number 4, action comes before motivation. Now we've talked about this a whole lot, and I feel like I've been talking about this a whole lot with clients. So I'll let you kick it off, and we'll go from there. I actually have a question that's going to probably make this a 2-parter episode as opposed to a 1-part
Ooh.
episode.
Ooh, all right, cool. It's like a cliffhanger. Come back for the last takeaway for the 2024 season. Yeah, I think that we talk so much about communication, connection, pain, all these things. But I really, at the end of the day, we're in sort of the business of helping people change behavior, whether that's mindset, movement, relationships, environment, all of these things that can affect the way we perceive ourselves, our bodies, our pain, you name it. And so many people who I talk to each week are kind of waiting for motivation, like waiting for the thing that's going to kick them into creating these habits of where they want to be and the lifestyle they want. And I think one of the themes that came up with all of our guests is how they typically have an action plan to help people with this behavior change. It's not just sitting around waiting for it to come to you. And I had a client yesterday that I was on a call with, and she mentioned that she was sort of like in just this hoping strategy. Like, I hope that the pain will just get better. But then when you sit down and ask her about her process week to week, there was no process. So it's like, I want to make money. I want to, get better at my job. I can't just hope for those things. I have to put together some sort of a plan. And I think that really has been a thing that I've been pushing with a lot of clients who've decided to commit to that process. Is like, hey, look, if we want to get to point C and we're at point A, we just have to get off of point A first. We have to find B. What does that look like? Because there's so many little steps that are going to get us to where we want to be. And if it's too big, and there's always that picture that comes to mind of like a million little steps, helps you achieve your goal. But if there's one step that's too big and you can't reach the top of it, well, then I just start walking back down in the direction I came, because that's the only thing that makes sense. So I think it is about this idea of being happy with little wins, being more patient, but most importantly, putting something into practice, not waiting for the right time, is I think where that action comes before motivation.
Yeah, I like that. And just on like, if someone's stuck on A and having a hard time getting to B or C, I was actually talking to Clayton yesterday, and we were talking about this thing where he just put into action. I don't know where he learned it from, but it was like he's trying to make some changes for himself, and he made a list of like all of his, like current habits in a sense. So if like your habit was like, I get home from work and I'm super tired and I can never like get into my workouts, like that would be your habit. And then in like the next column next to it, you'd put the habit that you want to like start to build. So you're almost like highlighting like where you are, like your habits today, and then where you kind of want to move to. And then you can like just pick one of them, right? And like start to like make a small change to move from A to B. So I don't know. I mean, I had that conversation yesterday, just made me think about it. So I don't know, maybe something like that might be helpful for someone if they're feeling like they're stuck in a sense, and trying to figure out what kind of habits, what kind of changes they can make. But just back to that, the point that you're making with, motivation comes after, taking action in a sense. And, the way I talk to all my clients about it is like motivation will come and go. You're going to have these periods of motivation, and you want to be able to capitalize on those periods when they happen. You don't want to be like, well, now that I'm motivated, I'm going to get into it, right? Like January 1 comes, everyone's going to be motivated to get out of pain, get back in the gym, do all the things they want to do. And if you were somewhat consistent during the holiday season and before that, even if it wasn't perfect, it's going to be so much easier to just like let that snowball effect actually happen and like crush January. Right. But if you're just trying to get into it, now you have to like get into the habit, build up that positive momentum because you had none before. So I tell people money is made when like the motivation and the challenges are hard. If like work is crazy, family is crazy, like all this stuff is going on, and you're able to like find a way to like have some sort of consistency, you're going to be making some sort of progress or maintaining during those periods of time. But like once that period's over, you know how much easier it's going to feel to get that stuff in? Like it's going to be unbelievable. So always the conversation I always have is like, it's really hard right now. Do anything, do something, because when that motivation comes back, when that time comes back, and you feel like you have more capacity, it's going to be so much easier for you to just continue to do the thing. And that's what makes long-term progress happen.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm going to go to my question to you, Joe. And this has been I don't know if it's changing the way that I think, it's personal experience for me, but I'm just going to leave the question to you. How long do you think it takes for someone to make like actual significant changes to how their body feels and moves?
Well,
this is almost getting off of our 5 takeaways episode. That's why I say we might need a 2-part for this.
Yeah, or maybe that's a great one to consider and maybe just give a clean slate to. So maybe we move that to our next episode just because we only have one more takeaway. And then we have suspense building for all the listeners. Because I do think that's a good question. And I think there's probably a lot of nuance into it.
Well, give me the short answer. And then if we feel like we need to expand and we want to do a full episode, we can.
All right, fair enough.
Because I'm just curious with where you are. And I was going to ask you this question about the top, but we went elsewhere.
Yeah, I had a question for you at the top too, but then I didn't want to get too far off. So now we have 2 ideas potentially. So I think honestly, my answer is instantly. I think when I'm done talking to people, working with people in a single session, they can instantly change how they move, how they feel. The caveat to that is that I also know that is fleeting. So we can instantly change someone's perception. It does not mean that those perceptions or behaviors won't creep back. Behavior change literature is all over the place. It's really unique. I always give a comparison of working with like A or NA. I have a few people in those programs. And I think that the reason behavior change is so hard and it's celebrated is because it takes so many different things to be successful. And if we think about those programs, and you touched on it before, right? How trust is such a big part of the rehab process. So I can figure out the solution to back pain and put it in a program for people. But if I'm just handing it to them, yeah, maybe half the people implement it and they're like, "Oh my God, you're a genius. This is exactly what I came here for." But then the other half are like, "Well, no, I never really did it because you didn't explain it to me and I didn't really enjoy it. It was, too hard. It was too easy. I didn't like exercise 2, so I'd always skip it." Right. So I think that with changing perceptions, they're all based on what's happening in the here and now. We get it on this morning. "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" Well, that's a loaded question. How did the kids sleep last night? Did you and Jen have a fight this morning? Were you able to get a workout in? Versus I ask you at 3 p.m. and the kids are napping, you and Jen made up, you got your workout in, right? So just in the day alone, we're having so much high and low variability. So I think consistency maybe takes 30, 60, 90 plus days. That depends on the individual. Some people need community and accountability. Other people, will hear one thing and just suddenly change the way they think. I know I've done that before. I'm sure you have too. But what makes an idea sticky, I think, is probably the real big thing. And that's what I try to do with clients. What's going to stick? And I just hope that I have enough time to get to that sticky thought or sticky emotion. And yeah, I do the best I can. So I guess without going off too far, what do you think of that? And was that where you were also thinking, or were you thinking more like structure?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that, from a habit change, from a, buy-in, even just like physically how they feel, short-term changes are quite easy to come by. I let everyone know, like, it may take us this long to get to this goal, based on whatever they are, but we're going to see progress, right? You're going to feel different. You will know in the first couple of weeks of working together, right? You're not going to have to wait 4 months or 6 months or however long we're planning on working together to just like start to notice the change happen, right? But I guess more of like from like if we're just taking the physical nature and the anatomy of the human body, like someone needs mobility or someone needs strength, stability, whatever it is, right? Like actually making changes that stick around for a significant period of time.
Yeah, weeks, months, years, or never. I think if we break it down by system, muscle and cardiovascular systems adapt the quickest. And then we're followed by probably all the other stuff, right? Then it's tendons and joints and capsules and blah, blah, blah. Those things take much longer. But then what do people experience all or most of their issues with? A lot of the white stuff, the tendons, the joint space, right? So I think that's why sustainability with programming is so important and so important for people to understand. And I would say, funny enough, that was actually some nice consistent feedback I got from people at the end of the year that, their programming was, they were like, "Hey, actually, a lot of the stuff you gave me was much more simple than the Nike app, than the Peloton app, than, these circuits I was doing in the past, but I wasn't breaking down. I wasn't getting hurt. I didn't have to stop for 2 weeks and recover." And I've noticed that even just when you write 1 rep extra a week, I'm always like, I could do more than this, but maybe there's a reason Joe's just writing do 5x4, 5x5, and then do a 5x5 plus week or something like that, and then reset ourselves. So I've just been abiding by that because I trust the process now, right? So again, it depends on what we're working with, but I think that's why, walking programs, running programs, people are like go gung ho about them. I start doing more and more and more and more. I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. Oh, and then I have tendonitis, or, that joint impingement or arthritis starts bothering me because it takes longer for those tissues to adapt.
Yeah, that's, I mean, like, again, what we talk about, change, some sort of feel better or change, and maybe short term is going to happen in the near future. But I've been thinking about it because, I sent you the squat just today. No real reason, but just to see, because, when you're looking at, like, I look at some of these things of myself and I'm like, feels different to me. Right. But I don't know if I like really see any real changes. So I sent it to you just to see what you would say, more than anything else. But what I found, like in like past programming for myself, like I have all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, for this, I have, do things in seasons. It's like 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, and I work on it, and you start to feel a little bit better, and things are moving, and then you shift to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I've been feeling pretty good. I mean, like, there's been nothing overly wrong, but I've noticed, like, squatting, even though I've been feeling pretty good, has always felt like very sticky at the bottom. Like it just feels tight, not painful, right? But just like, I couldn't sit in a bodyweight squat like I used to and things like that. And maybe like 2 weeks ago, I was dropping Olivia off at daycare, and I got down in the squat to like put on her jack, and I was like, wait a second, squat hasn't felt like this in a while. And then I've just noticed it, like I'm like one pin lower a little, like, and like the Anderson squats, and I'm like, okay, feeling good, feeling a little stronger out of the hole. I've struggled with a little like actual like hip flexion in a degree, and a lot of like hip extension. Like actually all extension work has been like a game changer, but I've been doing it for like 7 or 8 months now, maybe a little longer, maybe it's like 9 months now. So it's much longer than I would have had like normally programmed it, mainly because I don't program it anymore and someone else is doing it. It's just always there. And all of a sudden now I'm like, okay, well, even though I was feeling good and things were going well, like just this constant repetition of like loading rotation of my hips and loading extension, and like doing a lot more loading and strengthening of like end ranges in a sense, and like how they program it. Things are really just starting to like change from like a hip and back perspective, and getting even like a level above where I normally was. So, I guess I was just trying to figure out where your brain was, because, I think depending on, it all depends, right? Like some people may move really well and have pain, and they don't need a whole lot of work to make change. But some, like I was pretty limited in hip extension. I've always known that. And it took months and months and months, right, to get to a point where like I'm like really starting to notice like significant change to how things are. And it was longer than I may have like even thought in the past. So I might even be changing some of the way, depending on like how stiff somebody is or how long things are being going on. Like maybe I need to like, even my own mindset and how I might educate someone might need to start to shift a little bit. So I just figured we'd talk
All
about
right,
it.
cool. So
Ask the
what
question.
was there a correct answer, by the way,
Nope.
then?
Nope. No
No
correct
correct
answer.
answer. How far apart were the two pictures that you sent me?
A month.
Which one was the newer one?
The one with the hat.
Oh, okay. All right. So then my instant reaction was the one with the hat. I felt like you were further along just because you looked more relaxed there.
Yes.
That was
Apparently
my
so.
and then you yelled at me because then it was like,
Yeah,
oh,
I was
because the weight
just
was
I
different.
was
I
just
was like, the
busting your
weight
balls.
is only 10 pounds. But I thought you just looked a lot more comfortable. And then I saw, actually looking at it now, going back and forth, because you're wearing pants in one and shorts in the other. I also think you're getting several inches deeper in the hat picture now that I actually really look at it.
Now that I gave you the answer of which one felt better.
Yeah.
The biases exist, Joe.
Yeah. I see it.
I see it. I see it now, Joe. You got me. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting, and just something that might be changing my perspective. Not a whole lot, but maybe a little bit. Just personal experience, my own biases, how I feel, and just maybe someone who's listening. If you've like tried a whole lot of things, you've seen some progress, and then it goes backwards and forward and backwards and forward. Maybe it just takes longer consistency and inputs to make some of those changes. So that's it. Let's move to number 5, and then we'll take it home from there.
All
This
right.
is a good one. I actually forgot about this before you put it in the doc.
I think, and this just goes back to our first guest we ever had, Tyler. And when he sort of said this, it just kept echoing over and over and over again. How number 5 for me was pain is a skill, right? And you want to get better at squatting and deadlifting and your hip mobility and all of these things that we've either just talked about, we've talked about on the show throughout this year, we will continue to talk about in the months and years, hopefully, to follow. But I also think people just need to get better at understanding that, hey, you can shift your perception about your pain. Guess what? it's still going to be there. Like you'll leave our interaction, you'll feel better. Your hip mobility might be better in a couple months, but you're still a pain client. You still have, the ACL injury. You still have the lumbar radiculopathy injury because it's a part of you now, right? So when it comes back, I'd actually say when. I think most people can agree, and I can attest to this. I know you can. I'll feel good for several months. Training's going awesome. No signs of anything about to happen. And then I'm brushing my teeth and I'm laying on the floor because my back literally spasms so hard. And I've never felt anything like that in my entire life. So what did I do wrong? Right. And that was the first thing. It was like, oh, dang, what did I do? And then I had to reframe that. I didn't do anything. I've been feeling good. I've been working out. I've been eating okay. I've been sleeping good. I have all these like little tracker variables now that help me out and realize that. But getting better at just accepting where you are day to day, I think is so important. And there's nothing that makes me happier than after a first interaction with a client, and this happened twice yesterday, where they email me back and say, that conversation was already so valuable, so helped me process what I'm going through differently. And then I always write back, that is goal number one. I don't want us to forget all the things you told me and all the things you've been experiencing, because those will stay with us. Now we just view them through a different lens, and then we keep moving the goalpost forward, right? We chase that goal, we get to point B, and then we see what path we need to get to C. It might be different, right? And then just keep reevaluating. So yeah, that pain is a skill, I think, came through with every guest, every conversation. And I think that was probably a good last point takeaway for us.
I'll leave us with two things, and I'll let you take it home unless you have something you wanna talk about after. Agree with everything you say. I really take that as pain as a skill. I should probably use it more with my clients as an education point. But people who are in chronic pain, like a lot, they may not even have a lot of pain in the first place. But the goal is always like, I don't want to have any pain. I don't want to have any stiffness. And for some people, that may not be 100% realistic. And that's where like having pain is a skill, like understanding where your body is, how can we make it better? And then when stuff does happen, like what should you do about it? Or, what kind of tools do you have? So navigating pain in itself, I 100% believe is a skill just to acclimate to understand. And I think if we set the expectations, or your expectation is like, okay, well, I've had pain for like 5 years, so maybe I can't get completely pain-free, but your goal should then be like, well, how can I like go out and do the things that are important to me while having pain be as low as possible, right? So I can go enjoy life and like, okay, well, when I'm done, if my pain was like a 1 or 2, like a so low level where it's hardly noticeable, like, is that really going to be like a make or break deal for you? And that's really like the acceptance and the skill portion of things, I think, is like, that portion of things. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is this is a story that happened last night. And again, pain being a skill and tying it back into emotion. So I'm working with a client for, time always escapes me because I feel like it goes so fast. I'm going to say 1.5 years or 2. And if she's listening, she's going to probably say we've been working together, and she's going to be like, what
like 7.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been working together for 10 years.
I knew you in high school.
But, so, I originally saw her. She was recovering from a foot fracture. The pain was lingering around for a really long time. She's doing really great. She still gets some foot soreness, but she's back to playing tennis. She can walk 20,000 steps. She can jump. She can do everything that she wants, things like that. And then last night she was out, and she like rolled her ankle, and she had some pain, some swelling, things like that. The pain was right over the fracture site. So I get messages, she's nervous, she's fearful, like she's not sure what's going to happen. She's like, oh my God, this happened to me again. She's like, I was like, well, could you do this, this, and this? And I was like, okay, well, I don't really think that we need to do imaging. There's nothing here that tells me that we have to. There's no bruising. You're able to put some weight on it. So I think we'll be okay. But if you feel, it's going to be better for your understanding to just know that there's no break, then go out tomorrow and get an x-ray. And then lo and behold, after our conversation, she goes to sleep, she wakes up, and she's like, it seems like it's a lot better today. Like I can put some weight on it, it's not as swollen. She went to go get an x-ray. no break, no nothing, so like now all of a sudden like she's in a much different place. But like that whole swing, right? And that happens to everybody. It happens to me when my back flares up and things like that. And I think people should know, like, I tell people, feel what you have to feel, right? Like that's a normal part of the experience, but then take some time and process. We've talked about this on the podcast a whole bunch, but it's just another story that kind of highlights this stuff. It's like fear and apprehension, because it almost felt like the old injury that she's been trying to recover from and still, like impacted her life to a large degree. And she was worried that it would happen to her again. And then as she started to realize, okay, it's not as bad as it was when that happened. And there's nothing here that's really nerve wracking. It's like annoying. I have to like work on my ankle now, but she's in a much different place. So, just highlighting that as well.
Yeah. And can I just say something?
Shoot.
That's intelligent. That is exactly what our bodies are supposed to do. So when I hear people tell me those stories, I say, this is how I know you're normal. This is how I know you can learn. This is how I know you can get out of this, because you created a memory. You learned about there's an issue with your foot. You know the mechanism that hurt it before. You did the same thing. If you were incapable of learning, if your body was incapable of adaptability, I would expect you to have rolled your foot and not thought a damn thing. So feeling what you're supposed to feel is important. And one of the stories I had yesterday with a client was like, she's like, I just feel like I want to, sometimes with this pain, go into my room, put my head in a pillow and scream. And I just don't do that. I just like swallow it. And I'm like, no. When we get off the call, I want you to walk into your bedroom, lock the door, scream as loud as you can, throw a pillow somewhere, hopefully against nothing fragile, and then see how you feel. Let your body process. Let your body cope. You should be angry. You've been dealing with this for 10 years. You should be frustrated. You've been dealing with this for 10 years. This is how I know you can learn. You're experiencing the correct emotion for the correct time. Now we just want to not hit the button and make it go magically away. Turn the dial down, and then go from there.
Well, society tells us otherwise, right? So
that's it. Fuck society. Yeah. We're done. That's our closing society, remark Joe. Of 2024.
All right, man. Well, I got nothing left. If you got something, take it or take us home.
No, we're good.
The rest of the road is yours, Joe.
All right. Well, Joe, it's been a wonderful year. Listeners, it's been a wonderful year. Joe, I love you. Thank you for everything over the last few months. Listeners, thank you. We hope you have a happy, healthy, safe holiday season, and we will see you again in 2025.